Alright everybody, welcome back to another Chucky video. So this week, I wanted to help the community out a little bit. Chucky's kill rate is still the worst in the game at the moment, as of recording this video. And a lot of people are kind of struggling on what to bring on him, as far as builds, add-ons, and perks and things like that. So in this video, I wanted to go over what are some of his good add-ons now, what are some of the good perks. I'm not really going to go into full builds or anything like that. Most of the perks I'm going to go into and the add-ons, a lot of it's going to be personal preference. Luckily, a lot of these haven't changed too much, especially on the add-on end, but a couple have actually gotten buffed because of the changes, and we'll get into that here in a second. So, going over the add-ons first, I mean, the obvious ones are still good. Jump Rope is still incredible and good, and the 8% increased range can land you a lot of very good hits. It also kind of makes up for his movement speed, and as I've mentioned before in the past, his acceleration speed does not get affected by this. He still maxes out at the same point he normally does, while getting an 8% extra. This also happens with Portable TV, which I don't think is good, but Portable TV can be decent in certain builds, especially if you're playing for the in-game, which Chucky is one of the best in-game killers in the game. I have said this for a long time now. He can make very good use of Terminus, and he can make very good use out of No Way Out. And with the increased range, no one really sees it coming. It can get you some hits that are literally impossible for other killers. It's actually kind of great. Next, for the obvious ones, is Power Drill. Power Drill will never not be a bad add-on. Anything that decreases your cooldown will always be good. Power Drill more so than Screwdriver. While their effects are very similar, especially because of how the percentages work, it's actually almost extremely similar. It only saves you about an extra 2.2 seconds now over Automatic Screwdriver. You still do want to be landing your Slice and Dices, so Power Drill in general is better. The other one is Straight Razor. Straight Razor is Chucky's only good purple. So there's that. That's a good thing about it. But this gives you the Mangled and Hemorrhage effect when you land a Slice and Dice. Now, while this isn't very good for hit and run, because Chucky, for one, isn't very good at hit and run, and for two, hit and run isn't very good in the game at the moment anyways, what it is very good at is two things. One is slugging, and the other is resetting. The Mangled and Hemorrhage, if someone gets someone off the hook immediately or nearby, you can interrupt the heal and immediately get it. However, for the most part, you want to bring perks for this, not necessarily add-ons for this, but for slugging, it can be very good. That's 80 seconds of them not being able to basically instantly pick someone up, and it can allow you to get more pressure that way. Next, for some of the weird ones that, in my opinion, have gotten better since the changes, Running Shoes, which friend of the channel, Ghost Anonymous, has made very clear is one of his favorite add-ons. Running Shoes gives you that 2% extra movement speed when you scamper, which isn't that big of a deal, but on shorter loops with shorter walls, this can basically guarantee a hit. Personally, I'm not a fan of this add-on, but if you enjoy going for scamper hits or think that they are your bread and butter for getting downs, I do highly recommend it. The 2% doesn't seem like much, but it can matter in a lot of situations. Next is something I've been using a lot, which has been Amulet. Now, Amulet was never bad, per se, but it was almost not recommended. But the reason why I recommend Amulet now, the 50% increase means that if you happen to pop Hidey-Ho at a bad time and don't realize it, which, to be fair, you shouldn't be doing, but it does happen, this gives you more time to line up the shot better and take your time as to know when a Slice and Dice would be good to use. So it can be great in that situation. The other thing with this is basically if you pop Hidey-Ho at any point, that extra 50% basically means you're more than likely going to get some use out of it. With the way the base works right now, there's a lot of times where you will often use Hidey-Ho way too early or way too late and you won't realize it. The too late thing, there's not really much you can do about that, but doing it too early can be detrimental, but this can help make up for that. Also, being undetectable for most of the match is not a bad idea, honestly speaking. The other reason I really like Amulet is something I've done with my cooldown testings. Technically speaking, Amulet does not give you a lower cooldown. What it does do, though, is because of the hit animation being like 3.5 seconds and it instantly ending the cooldown at that M1 hit, you feel like you're getting the cooldown faster. It actually lowers it by 3 seconds. Doesn't technically lower it, but it feels like it lowers it. It's hard to explain. Trust me, use it for a couple matches and you'll notice what I'm talking about. The other one, which I've also been using a lot and talked to Smithsonian about, was Strobe Light. Strobe Light is, again, an add-on that kind of gets buffed when Chucky gets nerfed. Almost every time he's been nerfed in some way, shape, or form, Strobe Light has managed to get better and better and better. What this one does, for those who don't know, and I wouldn't blame you if you don't, is it lowers your terror radius by 8 meters whenever Hidey-Ho's on cooldown. Now, combining with Amulet or just in general, this basically means that you always have a benefit whether Hidey-Ho is on cooldown or off of cooldown. And 8 meters is nothing to sneeze at. I've talked about this many times before. They lowers you to 24 meters, and with the current changes to Slice and Dice, the range on Slice and Dice is about 22 meters if you're moving. And that's not even counting if you bring Jump Rope, which makes it a little bit longer, so about 24 meters. So you can actually hit people right on the edge of your terror radius. So if you can get the distances correct by eye, you can actually hit people without them even knowing you're there. Now they will still hear the but they have way less time to react, which can be very good. But again, the lower terror radius also can confuse survivors a lot of times. One of the things when I do my Chuck spots is I don't go into power because they can hear the laugh. But some survivors can trap you just based on how intense the terror radius is, and with Strobe Light lowering it, it can actually make it less intense and harder to track you that way. So it works against good survivors and bad survivors for different reasons. But I still recommend trying it, giving it a use. It's an add-on that you're not really going to notice the effect until you're actually like paying attention to what it's doing. The other thing with this is that the lower terror radius means that one of Chucky's biggest counters, that has always been his biggest counter, is pre-running. Survivors aren't going to be able to do that with this because they have no idea you're sneaking up on them. They don't have the footstep indicator, and they have 8 less meters to actually start running, which gives you about a couple extra seconds to catch up to people, which can be very nice. The last one I want to bring up is Hairspray Can. So Hairspray Can is interesting. Double taps are not really very good on Chucky anymore because of the slow speed. However, Hairspray can kind of make this work. For those who don't know what this does, it basically reduces the power gauge penalty of a basic attack to minus 20% rather than minus 50, which means you can get a hit off at pretty much any point during the Hidey-Ho and still be able to get a Slice and Dice. Regardless if you hit the person or not, you can still catch right back up, which is something that Hairspray can let you do very easily. This is more so a leeway giver than anything else, and it can be very effective in that case. And can still end your chases decently quick if you know what you're doing. And I lied, there actually is one more I want to bring up, and that is Rat Poison, which was nerfed by the devs alongside all these changes. Rat Poison's still good, everybody. I don't know why everyone thinks it's good. It's still good. Like, Rat Poison is still just fine. Yeah, they lowered the range by half, but in general, Rat Poison is still okay. It does the job it's supposed to do, I feel, more so than it did before. It's not a mini nowhere to hide on command anymore, but what it can do now is basically help you with those last-second indecisions. But again, the two best ones I would highly recommend if you're not running these. I don't think you even play Chucky at this point, but Jump Rope and Power Drill are probably the best combo to run overall. Some of the other ones I do want to bring up that are just, in general, not very good, and you probably shouldn't be running. I think basically all the purples except for Straight Racer. Don't run Hard Hat unless you're doing like a meme build. The idea is cool, but with a longer cooldown, it's almost never worth using to get rid of pallets. Silk Pillow, while I enjoyed it in my basically zero terror radius build, on its own is not that great. The charge time, what used to be fine, it got worse because of the slow speed that you go now, so I highly would not recommend it in any way, shape, or form, actually. Automatic Screwdriver and Carving Knife, both of them you don't want to miss, and Carving Knife really doesn't help you that much. It saves you about 0.3 seconds, which leads us into Good Guy Box, which does about the same thing. If you land a Slice and Dice, it saves you about 0.3 seconds. Again, this can matter, but most of the time it doesn't. Doll Eyes is actually pretty okay with the buff Scamper, but I still wouldn't recommend it. If you're going to run Doll Eyes, just run Zancian and get that aura reading when the pallet drops anyway, so she'll probably get you more Scamper hits from just that alone. And then last is Scalpel. If you're going to run Scalpel, just run Bloodhound, if I'm perfectly honest with you. Moving on, we're going to go over to the perks. So perks, again, I don't want to go over full builds, but I asked the two other resident Chucky mains, Ghost Anonymous and Smith, who I have definitely been mentioning throughout this video, on their opinions on what people should be running on Chucky right now. Now, we still haven't come to a conclusion on what the best build is at the moment, And the thing is, the generic stuff that's good on every killer is obviously good. Pain Res is good on Chucky. It's good on every killer. Of course, it's good on him. But there are a few I do want to bring up that are particularly very good on Chucky. And one of them I would say is almost basically required. And that is Corrupt Intervention. Corrupt Intervention, while still very good on pretty much every killer, the slower killers, the slow starts like setup killers and such, basically need Corrupt Intervention. Chucky needs it because he's slow at the start of the match. He doesn't start his power, so Corrupt Intervention can make getting across the map on these bigger maps very, very, very viable. One of the bigger issues is if a gen is on that far side, you physically cannot make it there in time before the gen pops, which immediately gets rid of a lot of pressure at the start of the match. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but it will help. Personally, I haven't been running Corrupt because there's a lot of times when survivors will hide because of Corrupt, and it makes that the beginning of the match very, very boring, and it becomes just like a hide-and-seek match until you happen to hear someone on a gen and they slip up, but that's just a me thing. The other one, similar to Corrupt, if you don't like the idea of having the gens immediately down, is Lethal Pursuer. Again, a decently good perk on a lot of killers, but Chucky can use it to basically know when to activate Hidey Ho and which gen to start doing it on, and get a free hit at the start of the match. You'll be surprised how often this works. Barbecue and Chili is decent. Again, what I recommended on him, he can't really make the most use out of the far ranges, but if you're just trying to, get into Chase to test out the new power and get over the fact that Chucky's a little bit slower and you need to get reused to it, I would recommend Barbecue and Chili, of course. I would not recommend Pop. Pop is not good on Chucky. I don't think it's good on most killers, if I'm perfectly honest with you. I don't think Pop is worth running most of the time. But Chucky can't really go to the gen he needs to. He's much slower, so he can't really waste too much time. If you're going to run a gen kicking perk, or one for slowdown in that case, I would recommend Eruption over Pop. Personally, again, not the biggest fan of Eruption because I don't like kicking gens in the first place. But if you're going to run one, I would run Eruption. Chucky can still get quick downs if you know what you're doing. And this basically means he can mark 3 gens and get that regression over 3 separate objectives rather than just one. Plus, the aura is not the worst thing in the world. So, it's always nice. Next is Brutal Strength. This was a perk that was not very good on Chucky prior to Scamper's removal, because you couldn't break pallets while in Hidey Ho mode. Once they removed Scamper and made it so you could break pallets in Hidey Ho mode, though, Brutal Strength got much better. It's very similar to Blight and Wesker, where you basically Brutal zone them to the right side the correct side of the pallet, Brutal Strength the pallet, and then slice and dice them immediately. This still works very well, and is very decent at that. And on top of that, just kicking things faster is just never a bad thing. Chucky doesn't want to break every pallet on the map, but the ones he does need to break or want to break, doing it faster is never a bad thing, especially with him being as slow as he is outside of Slice and Dice, even in Slice and Dice at the moment. It's a very good utility that you kind of need. Some wildcard ones I want to bring up here are Deathbounds and Hysteria. And Plaything to a degree, but basically anything that causes Oblivious. But these two in particular. Deathbound and Hysteria are very, very good on Chucky. Hysteria is probably worse than Deathbound because of its inconsistency, but adding Oblivious to anyone against Chucky can be a lifesaver. It lets them basically catch up to anyone and sneak around and hit them immediately and get those M1s and maybe into an M2. I've mentioned this before, Chucky's laugh of 12 meters that he does when he's undetectable does not apply when Oblivious. So affecting the survivor with Oblivious in some way, shape, or form can be very good. Plaything's good if you want more slowdown. Deathbound's good if you want people to not heal as much. And Hysteria is good if you want to keep them healthy for some reason. But Hysteria does have its uses. Hysteria is very good because the person you do hit first is actually afflicted with Hysteria. So you can kind of do a pseudo hit and run where you hit them, back off, and then come back. And a lot of times they won't expect it. Another one is Nurse's Calling. This is one that I haven't really been using too much, but Chucky is very good at interrupting survivors he can see with the Slice and Dice and sneaking up on them within about a 30-meter range. Nurse's Calling is about 28 meters. So what you can do with this is basically survivors will want to heal against Chucky because if you're exposed against Chucky, or I'm sorry, if you're injured against Chucky, you're basically exposed. So it can be very good information for that, and it can stop resets. And you'd be surprised how many people heal. The one problem with this is resets under the hook, which brings us into our next one, which is Gift of Pain. Scourge Hook Gift of Pain is probably the best Scourge Hook on Chucky. I will die on this hill. Again, Chucky wants people to be injured. It is one of his favorite things. Tracking is a lot easier when people are injured, as well as it basically guarantees a down if you can land your slice and dices. And Gift of Pain punishes them for staying injured while also punishing them for healing. So it's a very good combo in that sense. Obviously, you can combine this with Jack Compass, so it can be very good for that. Otherwise, there's not really too much. Nowhere to Hide is still very good. There's not like anything specific that Chucky makes the best use out of. But this is really what it comes down to, is that Chucky is an M2 killer who wants to keep people injured and can be very, very oppressive if he has ways to sneak up on people without them knowing. Oblivious effects are very good. Passive slowdown is very good. Things that require downs are very good. Things that I would recommend not running is anything that requires you to be able to get across the map very quickly. Friends of the End is still very good, but you're going to get more use out of the info rather than the exposed effect. But it also is a pseudo slowdown, so there's also that. Deadlocked is still pretty decent on him for general slowdown in there. Grim Embrace is still very good. There's still a lot of things you can run on this character. And as far as the add-ons go, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of it really does come down to personal preference. The trifecta of Rat Poison, Jumper Up, and Power Drill has been kind of dethroned a bit. I wouldn't say Rat Poison is bad anymore. It's still okay, but it's definitely not in the trifecta anymore. It's more of a duality. It's Jumper Up and Power Drill are pretty much the two best ones, but you can really run any of the ones I listed before. Running Shoes, Jump Rope, Amulet, Power Drill, Strobe Light, Straight Razor, or Hairspray Can. All of them are very good in their own ways, and it really comes down to a lot of this. The last perk I do want to bring up, though, the last thing I want to bring up, and this will have an entire video dedicated to it, because this perk, I feel, is one of the most meta things on this character, and we will start seeing it more and more on this character as time goes on. That is Rapid Brutality. Because of how the cooldown on Hidey Ho works, you should not be getting bloodthirst like at all. It should almost never happen. It's just because of the 14 seconds versus the 15 seconds. It might happen for a couple seconds, but that makes Chucky a 110 killer who is very unlikely to get Bloodlust. And I just need to make this very clear. That makes him very, very, very frustrating at some loops. And while it does require you to M1, you won't get this movement speed from the Slice and Dice. When you do M1, this gives you time to double tap with the Slice and Dice because the movement speed does carry over, as well as the fact that it just lets you catch up in general as a normal 115 killer. If they happen to go to a loop that's nearby to where you were and you still have the movement speed buff, that extra 5% can help you a lot. This can catch survivors off guard. It can help you keep your momentum. It can help you catch up to people. And I know there's probably someone in the comments right now typing something about that Chucky shouldn't be getting M1s. Again, Chuck spots exist. He is hard to see at some loops, and some people will end up just getting hit by it. You're 110 movement speed. You're still faster than the survivor. You will sometimes get those hits. If anything, I think I get more M1 hits now than I ever have. And that's just because Slice and Dice is as bad as it is. Plus, if you really want rapid value, you can kind of zone, hit them with an M1, and then use Hairspray Can so you don't lose your power, and then catch up immediately with a Slice and Dice. And if you're aiming it wide, oftentimes you'll get them before they make it to the loop. But again, Rapid will have an entire video dedicated to it. But this perk, I promise you, run it for 2 to 3 matches, and you will see the value from this perk. It is very well worth it. Now, again, there's no builds in this video. I didn't mention any full-on builds. This is really a personal preference thing, but these are the perks and the add-ons that I have found that are best on the currently new Chucky. Not too much has changed, but there are some that are definitely not as good as they were. Rat Poison being one of them. Jump Rope still is good, but in my opinion, it's not as good as it was. Portable TV is not nearly as good as it was. And things like power drill, I mean, inherently just got better. I used to tell people I don't think it was really worth running when his cooldown was 10 seconds. It was nice to have that 1 extra second cooldown shaved off, but I don't think it was necessary. Now I think it's a little bit more needed, especially if you're getting better at landing the slice and dices. So there's that. Which leads me into the last part of this video. I'm not going to do a whole video on this. I probably do a post or something on it. But talking to the other Chucky mains and such, who also, Smith and Ghost's things will be linked below. You should check them out for real. Ghost streams almost every other day. And Smith is over on Twitter a lot, showing off some scamper hits and things like that. But what I will say is, after talking to them a lot and to some other Chucky players I know of, we're getting used to these changes. Chucky isn't bad. He's not C tier. To be fair, I don't think any of us were calling him C tier other than like a couple people. But now that we're starting to get used to how to use the slice and dice, he's actually not as bad as he was. Now, again, a lot of us still don't like the changes and would like them reverted in some way, shape, or form. But I think for the most part, I think a lot of us are in the agreement. Chucky gets a few little tweaks, and he's perfectly fine. I think the acceleration needs to be looked at. I think maybe increasing the movement speed, and I think doing something with the cooldown, either lowering it base or making it so it has some condition to lower on its own. But that's just a me thing. Who knows? But let me know what you guys think, if there's any interesting builds you've come up with, and anything like that. One last PSS is the Terror Radius build for Silk Pillow and Strobe Light, which I have a video on. It does still work. It is not as good as it was, but it does still work. But I love you guys, as always. I hope y'all have a good one, and yeah, bye.
Subscribe, damn it. I'll be back. I always come back, and so should you, you moron.